It's harvest time in corn country. This year's harvest will be massive, more than 50 billion kilos worth. Dave Rice is racing to get his crop in before the weather turns.
The corn price is up to a little over $3 now. I can remember just a few years ago I sold corn for $1.37. I can't believe how much of a change the last couple of years there has been. I just can't imagine what's going to come the next few years, but it's changing fast. It kind of reminds me of the computer.
Dave Rice has been farming this land near Denison for nearly half a century. He used to plant corn and soybeans, but now it's exclusively corn. Every kernel goes to the same place, the local ethanol plant. This is one of the smaller plants in Iowa, but its appetite for corn is voracious. It swallows 17 million bushels a year, all of it locally produced.
What have we got here?
These tanks here are holding tanks for corn when it comes in. We have 2.6 million bushel storage, and that would last us 40 to 50 days per grind.
There are scores of plants like this operating or under construction in Iowa. It looks and smells like a cross between a distillery and a brewery. In fact, it's both of those things. Enzymes, yeast and heat are used to turn corn into alcohol.
And it'll take roughly 48 hours to ferment after it's in that tank.
This is the finished product, 200 proof ethanol.
Ethanol is great. I just can't say enough good things about it, that we can produce it right here. We can grow this corn, plant it in the spring, harvest it in the fall, and make ethanol into it in a matter of a few days, where it takes hundreds of years for oil to reproduce under the ground.
The ethanol industry's insatiable demand is driving up the price of corn and fueling a Midwest miracle. Rural communities are thriving. Dave Rice's income has doubled and the price of land is skyrocketing. Denison has fewer than 6,000 residents, but it's been able to build a new convention centre overlooking the expanded golf course, a new multi-million-dollar school and a new church.
What it's done for the state of even the local economy and the state of Iowa and the whole country is just amazing. The people have put the work, and it's helped put money in people's pockets, and it's just a snowball effect.
Jim Hansaker certainly has more money in his pockets. The third-generation farmer's rarely seen things so good.
It's happened over 20, 30 years. In fact, Henry Ford started to make his cars run on ethanol, and his good buddy had all this gasoline to do something with, so they converted it to run on gasoline. So it's an old fuel that way. We capture sunshine and turn it into a food product, a renewable food and fuel product.
The soaring corn price means this truckload is worth about $3,000. Jim Hansaker's land is worth 20% more than a year ago. His investment in 2 ethanol plants earns him thousands of dollars in dividends, and he still gets a $10,000 subsidy check from the government.
The subsidies have been going down substantially. They have millions of dollars less payment out this year than last year.
The government support comes in other forms too.
Mr. Speaker, the President of the United States.
George W. Bush wants to dramatically increase ethanol use, and he's called on Congress to mandate higher production levels.
America is addicted to oil, which is often imported from unstable parts of the world. The best way to break this addiction is through technology.
The farmers are riding high, and that makes them targets. What's happening here is creating international shockwaves.
So when the U.S. ethanol industry really took off, because the U.S. is such a large producer and supplier of feed grains, the whole feed grain complex around the world went up. So wheat prices in Australia, feed wheat prices in Europe, corn prices around the world went up. And so what happens to U.S. energy policy is right now driving world commodity markets to a certain degree, that's for sure.
corn is used for feed and appears in one form or another in most supermarket items. As the price of corn rises, so do the prices of the other products. It's estimated ethanols cost Americans $14 billion in higher food prices.
We found that once all the corn has gone through into the retail food prices, that maybe egg prices would be the most affected because they're very corn intensive. That might have gone up about 8%. Pork prices 4%, cattle and dairy prices 3-4%. In the United States, food prices have gone up about 4% for 2 years in a row, which is pretty high. And we attribute at most maybe half of that or less than half of that to ethanol and to feed grain prices.
Randy Hilleman understands both sides of the food versus fuel debate. He grows corn and raises hogs.
Feed is our most expensive product. That's what consists of our highest percentage of our cost is feed. And so you have to watch that very closely.
Randy Hilleman has 15,000 pigs and their feed comes from corn. Because he grows his own grain, he'll escape the price squeeze, but the rest of the hog industry is nervous.
It doesn't look too rosy for this next year. There might be some times that a guy might be profitable, but it looks like a lot of people could be not making much money or even losing money just because of the high feed costs and fuel and everything else. Everything's up.
It's people, not pigs, who are particularly vulnerable. In many countries, the poor rely on grains. Already, tortilla prices in Mexico have jumped 60%. Wheat in India is up more than 10%.
The grain it requires to fill a 25-gallon SUV tank with ethanol will feed one person for a year. And so what we're beginning to see now at the global level, for the first time ever, is direct competition between the 860 million people who own automobiles and want to maintain their mobility, competing for grain with the 2 billion poorest people in the world who are simply trying to survive.
Lester Brown is an author and environmentalist. He believes the ethanol boom could create unprecedented global insecurity.
It's reached the point where it's really distorting reality in a way that can be very damaging over the long term. My own sense is we probably should have an embargo on the construction of any more ethanol distilleries until we get a chance to see what the effect is going to be of those that are already in production and the number that are under construction.
Those arguments aren't welcome in Iowa. The corn lobby blames high petrol prices and the drought in Australia for inflating food costs, and farmers talk of an anti-ethanol conspiracy.
It's an easy scapegoat because everybody's heard about alcohol and everybody's heard about the price of corn, and so we're going to just blame the farmer and raise the price. And it's done that for as long as I've been farming, which has been 40 years. So.
At the ethanol plant, Dave Rice showed me a giant storeroom. It houses distillers' grains, one of the byproducts of ethanol. It feels like the crumbs you find in the bottom of your cornflakes packet.
The protein content of kernel corn is 9% protein. When you get the alcohol out, the starch, the CO2 out, you have a product that's 28% protein.
The byproduct can be fed to some animals, and the plant hopes it might one day be able to make it fit for human consumption. A development that would take some of the heat out of the food versus fuel debate.
So we're not just robbing food from the mouths of babies. We are taking the starch, leaving behind a feed product, and producing a very valuable energy product.
Bob Dineen heads the National Ethanol Industry Association. He's an unabashed ethanol evangelist.
It is helping to reduce pollution in our nation city because ethanol will reduce all the criteria pollutants. It's helping us to reduce our dependence on imported oil. And it is, for the very first time, helping us to make a major step toward reducing global climate change. The 5 billion gallons of ethanol that were produced last year was the equivalent of taking 1.2 million vehicles completely off the road.
A growing number of people dispute those claims. Sceptics say ethanol can't reduce America's dependence on imported oil because even if the entire corn crop was converted to fuel, it would only displace 15% of petrol consumption. They question ethanol's green credentials, pointing out many ethanol plants are powered by coal and a lot of ethanol is transported by truck.
We plow up more land in this country. Some of it probably shouldn't be plowed up. We use more fertilizer. It takes more water. Corn is a very nitrogen hungry plant. It uses a lot of nitrogen fertilizer. And it's the runoff from this that ends up in the Gulf of Mexico and creates that huge dead zone each year, as big as the state of New Jersey. It just eliminates fish, period, from that area.
Well, it's a con. About 100 years ago, a lot of people got rich by going into farm country and selling the rubes on the farm snake oil. The ethanol program is revenge served cold by the farm community. It's snake oil, except it's snake oil being sold by farmers to the rest of us.
Fast cars, intense competition, things that bring Americans together. And now there's one more thing that can unite us: ethanol.
If ethanol is snake oil, why do people keep buying it? Certainly TV ad campaigns and promotions are generating enormous hype. America's IndyCar races now run on ethanol. An even bigger factor in the ethanol boom is the enormous political power of the corn lobby.
The farm lobby is so powerful that even the oil lobby runs from the room scared for a confrontation. Nothing has been able to tame this program, regardless of merit.
Iowa is particularly powerful. It hosts the nation's first caucus and has a big say in choosing the presidential candidates. That's why ethanol skeptics like Hillary Clinton and Fred Thompson embraced ethanol when they started running for the White House.
The frustrating thing for me is that all of the rationales for why we should worship at the altar of the corn god are utterly and easily disprovable and nonsensical. It's like trying to tell people they shouldn't buy that snake oil, but finding that no one's listening to you and the snake oil is still the hottest thing on the shelves.
There are concerns, but none of them are things that the marketplace cannot work out. None of them are things that aren't being addressed today, and none of them are any reason to stop the progress that we have made in developing a worldwide renewable fuels industry.
The ethanol price is fading, but the frenzy isn't. Farmers are growing more corn, building more plants and distilling more ethanol. It's a Midwest gold rush with global consequences.